Welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we are going to dive into book one of the Darling Campbell series by J.S. Cooper. Now, this is a series, but we're not going to do the full series. It's one of those series that each one of the books can be done as a standalone, and so that's how we're going to do book one. And the name of it is called Just So You Know, I Don't Work on Fridays. We meet Harriet, and she's just got some disappointing news. Her parents are getting a divorce, and they just told her and her two other siblings. Harriet's 22. She works at a coffee shop in Port Sunshine, which is somewhere in Florida, but I couldn't find out if it was like an actual place because when I tried to Google it, nothing popped up. So it's a fictitious small beach town in Florida. She has a coworker named Delilah. Delilah's probably in her 50s. She says really quirky things to the customers as they come in. And then we have Molly, who's probably like 19, 20. That's her other coworker. The boss's name is Charlotte. She's not there, but she's the owner of the place. And it might even be named after her, if I'm not mistaken. So anyway, Charlotte bought this new espresso machine, but didn't teach anyone how to use it. And so no one knows how to use the thing. So the surfer guy comes in and he wants a black coffee. And then this other guy comes in, seems kind of out of place, got a business suit on. He's kind of yelling in his phone, going off on someone, not really paying attention to people around him. He's one of those types, just uppity rude, right? And Delilah goes back to get the coffee for the surfer guy, but she doesn't use the espresso machine because, again, no one knows how to. So she goes in the back and she comes back with some black coffee. Okay. So then the other guy, that's the one that Harriet goes up to and asks him, how she can help him or whatever. And he says, where do you get your beans? And she's like, what? I don't know. Costco? The U.S.? I don't know. So he goes into this whole thing. They're going back and forth. He's telling her he prefers Rwandan beans. And she is like, okay, I'm sure we have some. So because he's a dick, she decides she's going to charge him $20. And she's going to use what they've been doing, which is there's a Keurig in the back. And she gets the Dunkin' Donuts flavor one and gives it to him. And he's like, this tastes like pure shit. He's like, what the hell did you just give me? So then the owner, Charlotte, comes walking in. And she, of course, sees this debacle. And she's like, what's going on? And the guy was like, she told me these were Rwandan beans. And this coffee tastes like shit. So Charlotte's like, I'm so sorry. We don't serve, Rwandan beans. I'm so sorry, And she fires Harriet right on the spot. And he also told her that she overcharged him because she charged him like $20. And then he gave her a tip of 5 cents. So when he finally looked up, because they weren't like looking at it, they were just kind of going back and forth. When she looked up at him, she did notice he had these beautiful blue eyes. And she was like, Jesus, you get lost in those things, But Charlotte's like, go get your stuff. You're done. So she goes and gets her stuff. And Harriet makes a comment to the guy like, oh my God, I can never work for you. Like, you're awful. You're a horrible person, all this type of stuff, And he tells her, I'd have you in tip-top shape and all this type of stuff. And so Charlotte gives her like an ad paper and was like, hopefully you'll find something in here, And so she heads out. I forgot to mention Molly. I think she's either 18 I think she's 18. She's either 18 or 19. She wants to get out of Port Sunshine. She wants to go to Hollywood. She wants to be an actress, or she just wants to marry rich. That's her ambition. Harriet leaves. She calls her sister Polly, who's the middle sister. So we've got Harriet, who's the oldest, Polly's the middle, and then Chelsea's the baby sister. So Polly is like, all of them are quirky, okay? All of them are quirky and goofy. Um, Both of their parents are a little off the wall. Like, for instance, her mother is an art. Their mother, let me say it correctly, is an artist, but she likes to paint dogs as superheroes. Okay, so her work is not really in high demand. Okay, then you got the dad. He likes to invent things, but normally it's things that no one really wants. Right? So this is where they come from. Um, she tells them what happened because her sister got Chelsea on the phone. She tells them what happened, and we find out she's an artist herself. Harriet is, and but her thing is more so abstract art. And so her sisters are like, well, maybe you can like paint some tourists, you know? And she's like, I don't want to pimp out my art like that, you know? And they're like, I mean, if you'd rather be a bum with standards, go for it. So then she gets to her apartment, hangs up with her sisters, and they roasted her a lot too. I'm sorry, throughout that phone call, because they told her like, you need to get laid. That's part of the problem with you. So she gets there, and there's a notice on the door, and it's telling her she's got to get out. She does have roommates, by the way, but she's got to get out. On the phone with her mother, she calls her, and her dramatic person, okay? And she says that's where her and her sisters get it from, the mother. The mother doesn't seem to think that she's dramatic, which is the funniest thing. So the mother's complaining about their father. She's like, she's divorcing him. So apparently there's a threat to divorce every month. He's an inventor. He's absent-minded a lot. He's been that way since forever. But his work is more important than hers. So it's a whole thing. So, Harriet's like, my bigger problems. Like, I got to figure out what I'm going to do. I got to find a new place, X, Y, and Z, get a new job, all this type of stuff. Well, then one of her roommates comes in. Her name is Brittany. And Brittany comes for money, so she doesn't really stress about this type of stuff. Plus, she's got a few lovers. One of them's married. She's got a couple places she can go. So she's cool. She's not really concerned. So the guy that they were renting from the house from, his name's Travis, and he's already sold the house, and so the people want to take possession by the end of the week. So that so quickly. So Brittany tells her, if you need money, there's a wet t-shirt contest at this place called Gators. And she, of course, is like, do I really look like I would do something like that? And Brittany's like, listen, you seem kind of desperate. So unless you know where to get money from fast, for a deposit on an apartment by the week, feel free to share. So then she leaves. She sees a position for a live-in housekeeper. It's good pay, and she's not really good at cleaning and stuff like that. But she figures, you know what? I can fake it. And so she's going to call this number. She calls the number. Woman picks up. She sounds older. And we find out she's the current housekeeper. And she's going to be leaving in a few days. And so she, of course, knows he needs to try and fill the position pretty quickly. So she asks her some questions. How many years experience did she have with housekeeping? And she said for her, in her mind, she rationale that, the fact that she keeps her room clean, even though it looks like a pigsty right now, that she's got some years experience, with this. Woman wants to know if she cooks, she's going to be expected to cook breakfast, lunch, and dinner and host parties and things like that. So she lied, said she went to some institute in Paris said Gordon Ramsay taught her, just all kind of stuff. She named all these different dishes with foie gras, all kind of stuff. And the woman is eating this shit up, right? And she's like, "Oh, you sound great." She's like, "Can you come in tomorrow for an interview at 9 a.m.?" And she's thinking she could do this through the summer. And then hopefully her art grant will come through. And then she can just quit this job. So I also forgot to mention she had gotten a call from one of the girls she works with. Um, I forget which one. Was it Delilah? It might have been Delilah. And she no, it wasn't Delilah. It was Molly. It was a young girl. Because she kept asking Harriet, "Do you think that guy that came in today was like a producer or something like that? Do you think he wants any actresses?" Like, she was just literally calling her, not because she, gave too much about the situation, because she thought the guy was like her way out of this town, you know? And she's thinking, what if he came in to see me, Like, this girl. Harriet has her sisters, Polly and Chelsea, come over to help her pick out an outfit for the interview. She's super nervous. We find out that with the hippie parents that they had, they've always been told, you can do whatever you want, almost to a fault, though. Okay? To the point to where they almost, it seems they don't, I don't know how to say this. They just kind of float, right? They just kind of go with it. For instance, I think one of the sisters wants to be a kayak instructor, but she's never ridden a kayak. One wants to be an acrobat, but she's never taken gymnastics. They are just dreamers, which is cute to an extent. They're trying to figure out who this person could be because they haven't said, who the person is. Um, they didn't tell her the woman didn't tell her over the phone who she would be working for. So they know that stars come to this town. She's never seen them, but apparently they know that different stars come to this town. So she then gets a phone call from Delilah. It was an unknown number, and she just wanted to apologize. She felt like it was her fault that she got fired. Um, she was thankful to Harriet for not, telling on her for using the Keurig in the back. And Harriet was fine. She's like, you know what? It was coming. He was a jerk. All this type of stuff. But she did appreciate the fact that she reached out to her. So she pulls up to the house the next day. It's a long driveway, beautiful home. Older guy answers the door. She's thinking this is the guy, but he's the butler. His name's Benedict. And he's also the chauffeur, and he also does the gardening. And he's like, if you get the job, you won't just be the housekeeper. You'll do the cooking, you'll host parties, that type of thing. So now her mind's kind of like, oh shoot, I probably have to do a lot more than what I thought. Because she started to think, like, if this is like a business guy, he's not going to be here that often, and I won't have to do that much. Doesn't sound that way as Benedict is talking to her. So she walks in, gorgeous marble everywhere. She's thinking, I'm not going to be able to keep it this clean, This is a lot. So then he offers her champagne. She's like, it's 9 a.m., And he's like, well, maybe a mimosa. And she starts thinking maybe this is the owner and this is like some type of trick. So the guy says, it was just a test or whatever. And she's thinking, okay, weird. So then Gladys comes in, and she looks about 80 years old, but she's wearing the highest high heels she's ever seen. And for some reason, Harriet starts speaking in a British accent. Okay? Don't know where it comes from, but once she started, she's got to commit to it now. So the woman's asking her, have you ever made beef Wellington? duck la orange, you know. And she's like, oh yeah, I can make duck banana, duck pineapple, duck strawberry, whatever you like. She's like, because when you experiment, you know, that's how you get perfection, all this type of stuff. And she's like, I like to put my spin on meals and things like that. So she says she worked for the royal family. Um, she says she couldn't tell him because of the NDA. And she just keeps going on. It's just a lot. And so eventually the woman tells her, I don't think you're going to be a good fit. The woman says, you're a lot younger, and my employer's younger, and I just don't think it'll be appropriate. And so, our girl Harriet, she goes off. And she's like, it's because you want your sister to have this job. So the woman had said on the phone that her sister lived, I think she was working in Cape Cod or something like that. And she wanted her sister basically to get the job. And so she's like, you just want your sister to come down from Cape of the Sky or whatever it is. And then she hears a familiar voice. She looks, and yes, it is the guy from the coffee shop. And so she goes off on him. She's like, wow, really? And he's shocked, of course, to see her. And she tells him, I'm here because I've got to get a job, because if I don't, I'm going to be homeless. And you're the reason I got fired. And she goes off and goes off. She's about to leave, and he grabs her arm, and he says, we haven't done the interview yet. So she comes back, and he, of course, is like, what are your qualifications for the job? And so Miss Gladys starts listing off all the bullshit she said. And he's like, oh, really? But why is it that you couldn't make a basic cup of coffee? She's like, because the espresso machine, we don't know how to use it. And so that came from a Keurig. And he's like, so tap water is what you gave me. And so she's like, who's your boss? Because she's still under the notion that it's some type of actor, singer, some type of A-list person is, the boss. And he's like, what are you talking about? She's like, seriously, tell me, like, who you work for. And she started listing these different people. She's saying George Clooney. I mean, she just names a ton of people. She's like, everyone's been so secretive about it, I figured it had to be some huge star, And so Miss Gladys goes, it's him. He's one of the richest men in the world. And he didn't want anyone to know who he was. Because what happens is you get gold diggers or people who want to fund their latest projects. And so they didn't want to reveal who he was. She's like, I don't have a clue who you are, And Miss Gladys is like, you don't read Forbes magazine? And he's like, what do you read, People? She's like, well, I don't buy the magazines. I just read it online, So he's like, do you really have the experience that you're saying? Talking to like she's been under the tutelage of like this Michelin chef. Like, seriously, And she, of course, sticks to the lie. She does not budge. She says that she has all this experience and it's the truth. And she does say that the guy, because then he asks, he's like, are you really about to be homeless? And she's like, yeah, the guy sold the house that I was renting, and I've got to be out by the end of the week, and I really don't want to move back in with my parents. Which is the most honest thing she said this whole time, And he just kind of was like, he did feel like Charlotte firing her was a bit extreme. But then he also asked her, but why did you make me a bad cup of coffee, right? Like, why would you do that? And she said, because you were rude and you were obnoxious. And when you came in, you were on a phone call and you were just so extremely dismissive, you know? And so he told Miss Gladys to get her paperwork done. And Miss Gladys was like, "Sir, are you sure?" And he's like, "Get the paperwork done." And she started thinking, like, maybe by the end of the summer, she can get his hands on her bottom. Like, she's thinking about having a hot girl naughty summer. I said, well, go ahead. Her sisters are helping her pack her stuff up. She's like, I can't believe I got to pack my whole life up. You know, she's not going to be able to take all this stuff. And then she's thinking about taking a ton of it to her parents. And they're just kind of like, I don't think they want you to bring up all your stuff back. You know what I mean? And she's like, well, they always tell us we can come back. They're like, yeah, you, not your stuff, you know. So she's thinking about donating to Goodwill. And Chelsea's like, don't you do that? They're for profit. They are not nonprofit, you know. And she's like, fine, I'll just take it to a local shelter. She also had bought this itty bitty bikini because she still plans on being able to go by the pool and go to the beach and get her tan on. So, she had, okay, so initially her sisters had wanted her to get, before she got fired, some Ed Sheeran tickets, right? But now she's like, if I don't have to pay rent and stuff like that, I'll be able to buy us Beyonce tickets, you know? And she was like, they of course were like, but you didn't even have enough money for Ed Sheeran. And I'm just kind of like, what the fuck do they do? Like, they ain't got no money? Like, why is she feeling like she's got to do all this expensive shit? Like, I was just kind of like, where is that entitlement coming from with them? This is not cute. But anyway, she tells them she'll have them over for a barbecue and all this type of stuff. Because again, she's under the assumption that it's not going to be that busy. He's not going to be there. You know, that type of thing. So she hopes to work her charm on the butler so he'll be on her side so she won't get in trouble when she does the things she's not supposed to. That type of thing. So she gets to the house. Benedict's the only one there. She gets the tea from him. Miss Gladys quit, honey. She was supposed to go over everything with her, but she quit. She apparently, Gladys and Finn got into an argument because she said she didn't think it was a good idea for him to hire her, and you know, the fact that he wasn't taking her consideration into his decision just upset her, and she just quit on the spot. So first of all, she was shocked to see that he went to bat for her, you know. And then Benedict shows her her room, and it's nice, it's huge. And she asked, you know, if if Miss Gladys's room was this Miss Gladys's room? And she's like, no, her quarters were on the other side of the house. You're the only one that's on this side, which is the same side as the boss. And she's like, oh. And so then she even asked him, like, are your quarters like this? And he's like, no, they're not. So then he tells her what her salary is. And it's going to be $150,000 a year. And she's like, well, I'll have to, have to have time off and things like that. And he's like, your salary. So whenever you're needed, that's when you'll work, you know? And she's still with the idea that, okay, he's not going to be here all the time, so still this is going to be pretty good. But you already know, the mere fact that she's thinking that, you already know that's not going to be the situation. So that's the end of that. And then he leaves. Before he leaves, he does tell her that the boss is in Tampa. He had a business meeting. He won't be back until tomorrow. XYZ. He leaves. So she calls her sisters And she FaceTimes to show them the room and stuff like that. And they're like, oh my gosh. She tells them what she's going to be making. And they're like, oh my gosh, you really are going to be able to get us those tickets. And I'm like, these little fuckers. Another thing she was talking to her sisters about was the fellowship that she's put in for, which is going to require her to have off Fridays. Okay, and I'm like, oh, that's cute. I get it. Title of the book. That's cute. She didn't bring it up in the interview, um, but eventually she's like, I will let them know eventually, because what'll happen is with this fellowship on Fridays, she's gonna have to teach art classes to kids on Fridays. So that's that whole gig. Um, she gets off the phone with them. It's time for her to go to bed, but she's kind of her mind's running a lot, and she winds up getting a call from her younger sister Chelsea, who was calling back to check on her, and was kind of like, I figured you were probably nervous, but really Polly is the one that thought this, but knew it would be better received from Chelsea, so she told her to check on her. I was like, now that is sweet. um and then they had this little conversation. They were talking about marriage and stuff, and how you should marry your opposite. And the problems that their parents have is that they married the same type of person and all this type of stuff. That's why they can't get along. And Chelsea's telling her, you need to marry someone rich and all this type of stuff. And she, of course, is like, I'm not going to marry someone based on money. I'm not doing that. And she's like, but you can marry someone rich and then you can buy us things. And I'm just like, bitch, how about you go sit on a dick and and get stuff that way? Like, why she gotta do it? I'm just saying, she gotta do it. Her and Chelsea also talked about the fact that Chelsea likes to sleep naked, and she told Harriet you should try it, because Harriet had said these were like the best sheets she'd ever felt. And Chelsea's like, sleeping naked is the best, trust me. So she hangs up with her. Polly calls her. They talk for a little bit. Um, and then she hangs up, uh, takes a bath, and then she gets in the sheets. She's naked, and it does feel amazing. It feels absolutely amazing. And so then she starts thinking about looking up, how did, Joseph, not Joseph, his name is Finn Joseph, how he made his millions or his billions, because he's supposed to be a billionaire. And she winds up falling asleep. Next morning, boom, Finn's in her room. He's got on nothing but his boxers, and he's like, Harriet, wake up. She's knocked out. She's trying to come to. She's like, what? What are you talking about? He's like, why have you not made my breakfast? And she's like, what are you talking about? He's like, you were supposed to have my breakfast ready. So it's like 5:30 in the morning. And she's like, I'm going back to sleep. And he rips the covers off of her. And so, woo, she's naked. His eyes bulge. She is mortified. She runs into the bathroom. He's like, I'm sorry, I didn't know. So she's like, well, you shouldn't barge into people's room. And he's like, you should have had my breakfast ready. She's like, I didn't know your schedule. No one gave that to me. And he's like, the butler, Benedict was supposed to give you that information. She's like, well, I didn't get anything, especially since Gladys quit. So Finn said he had emailed her some stuff too. She's like, well, I haven't checked my email. I didn't know. And so he was like, he had gone to take a swim, and now he's ready for his breakfast. She's like, fine. She says, what do you want for breakfast? And she's still in the bathroom, by the way. And he says he wants eggs Benedict. She's like, fine. Even though this girl don't know how to make this. She's like, well, can you leave so I can come out? And he's like, why do I need to leave for you to get dressed? She's like, because there's only towels in here and my clothes are in the room. And he's all like, that could be fun. She's like, yeah, I'm sure you'd want to pull me over your lap. And He's like, what did you say? And she's like, nothing. I'm just joking. So he finally leaves and she puts on some clothes, walks out. He's tapping his foot and he made a comment about her bush. So she can't even remember the last time she had like her Brazilian wax. And he was just like, I'm just shocked, you know. He was shocked that she was au naturel, you know. And he wouldn't repeat what he said and she wasn't going to repeat it either. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be such a mess. So he says to her, like, okay, how long do you think it's going to take? And she's like, I don't know, maybe an hour. He's like, an hour? For what? She's like, well, the Campbell potatoes take at least 30 minutes. He's like, okay, so then 30 minutes. He leaves. She calls her sister Polly, begs her to go to like Denny, IHOP, somewhere that makes eggs Benedict and get some potatoes. And her sister, no, she called, was it Polly or was it Chelsea? I don't even remember now. It was one of them. And she's like, what if they only have hash browns? She's like, get them. And I'll just say that's how we do it in the Campbell household, right? So she's going in the kitchen because she's got to make it look like she's been cooking, right? Can't be super clean. Then he's going to know. So she gets some water out, gets some eggs out. She's got some English muffins out, you know. And she's starting to get hungry too. So then she calls her back and she's like, hey, can you just get 2 of everything? And the girl's like, I don't have enough money. I think it's Chelsea because she has the use of the emergency credit card because she's in college. Actually, I think both of the girls are in college, if I'm not mistaken. It's just that the only one that graduated, it has been Harriet, and she's about to go into graduate school as well. So Harriet's like, I'll pay you back. Just do it, you know? So she's like, I don't want to get in trouble, you know? So she's like, you won't get in trouble. I told you I'll pay for it. I'll get you anything you want with my first paycheck. She's like, I want a Mercedes. She's like, I make $150,000 a year, not a month, you know? She's like, well, I don't know how much Mercedes costs. So I'm just like, oh my gosh. So she finally gets her off of the phone. So she starts faking like she's doing stuff in the kitchen. He comes back in. He's like, I don't smell anything. You're going to have everything done in 10 minutes? And she's like, yeah, it may take a little bit longer, you know, whatever. But yeah. So then he wants to know what she's going to make for lunch. And she's like, a BLT. He's like, that's it? She's like, what else do you want? He's like, I was thinking like a Caesar salad or a potato salad, you know. I'm like, good grief. And she's like, I can make all that, you know. He says, what about dinner? She's like, I'll make the Campbell's famous meatloaf. And he's like, I'm not really a fan of meatloaf. She's like, well, you haven't had my mom's special recipe, you know. If we could sell it, it would fly off the shelves. And he's like, at a restaurant? She's like, you know what I mean. So then he's like, your family seems to really love to cook, you know? And so she starts like, yeah, if we could open a restaurant, it would be a dream. And he says, you know, we've have a business plan. I'm always up for new ideas. And I'm just kind of like, whoa, 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 whoa. You said in the beginning that you didn't want people pushing their ideas on you, trying to get an investment. So this is kind of like, what? You know? That's kind of weird. But then he also made a comment about the fact, he says, I didn't know girls your age went au naturel. And she was in shock that he brought that up again. And he had also called her cute. And I was like, yeah, y'all finna be a mess. Then he started saying stuff about her wearing something like a French maid outfit. And she's thinking, okay, is he trying to tell me he wants me to dress sexy? Like what? So she's having all these thoughts and she spaces out so she doesn't hear anything that he said. And I'm like, oh, shoot. I know this is going to bite her in the ass. She should have been paying a fucking attention. Polly finally gets there. She was smart though. She parked down the street and like came around the driveway. So she calls her. She goes out, gets the food. Guess what? Only place that was open was McDonald's. So she got 2 egg McMuffins and some hash browns. And she's like, you can take the ketchup, the hot sauce, and some other sauce. You can mix it together and tell them it's like a special Campbell sauce. And she's like, yeah, I could do that. And then she tells her she had saw some on TV where people like blindfolded the person and then they let them taste test because apparently, when you take away one sense, it heightens the others, right? So she's like, okay, I'll do that. I'll do that. So she comes back in, and if he looks at it, he's going to know what it is. So that was a really smart idea. But when he came back, he was like, where's the dining? She asked him where he wanted to have his meal. He said the dining room. Remember, she hasn't gotten a tour, so she didn't know where it was, so he had to take her there where it was. So they get there, and another thing he had to go off because he was like, Benedict didn't give you a tour? And she's like, no, he didn't do anything. So Benedict was supposed to give her a lay of the land as well as a list of her duties. And he ain't do nothing. So he told her about the fact that he didn't like Gladys's sister's attitudes, or he wasn't going to hire her anyway. And he just didn't appreciate the things that Gladys was saying about Harriet with her being young and all this type of stuff. So he shows her to the dining room. It's beautiful. He's sitting and she tells him about the whole blindfold thing that she's going to do, that she picked, that they did in culinary school. And so he's like, okay, what are you going to blindfold me with? And he took his shirt and put that over as she used those. So she goes and gets the stupid food, and he pulls her into his lap. She gives him a taste, and he says it's funny that the Campbell breakfast tastes like a stale egg McMuffin. And she's like, oh, really? And so I'm like, oh my gosh. So then his hand starts going up her right side. And she's like, what are you doing? And he says, what do you want me to do? Harriet jumps up because she's like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? He's like, you know what I mean. Well, while she was in La La Land, he was saying to her that if she wanted a less conventional type of a relationship, he was willing to accommodate her. So then she comes and does this blindfold shit. Yes, he pulled her into his lap, but he says she was wiggling her ass on him. So he's thinking, okay, she's down for it. And I'm like, that's why you have to pay attention. So she says, I freaking work for you. And she ran to her room. She calls her sisters, tells her what happened, and that he thinks I want to sleep with him because of what you did. And we find out she got the blindfold thing from Love is Blind, which is a whole ass dating show. And Polly was like, listen, I had to get out of bed for you. I think it was Polly. I had to get out of bed. You know, I don't know what else to tell you at this point. You're on your own. And just go ahead and sleep with the man. You clearly want to. And she's on the whole, I'm not Julia Roberts. I'm not a hooker. And she's like, you already have the job. Just see what happens. And she hangs up. So then about 10 minutes later, Finn comes, knocks on the door. And he's like, can I come in? He comes in. He steps closer. And she's like, what are you doing? And he's like, what do you think I'm doing? And he's like, I'm going to kiss you. Well, she grabs his head and kisses him. And then he starts moving those hands. And she's like, I'm not like doing it fully. Like, I'm not going to like fuck you. He just wanted her to admit that she was turned on by the conversation that they've had a couple times when it comes to this spanking thing. And that she's attracted to him. And eventually she does admit it. So he did say to her, like, you did pull my face down and kiss me. You know what I mean? So clearly you are attracted. So then she starts rambling. She's like, it's been a really long time since I've had a boyfriend. Yes, I like sex, Who doesn't like sex, My sisters are always on me about it. She's just rambling, right? And this is intriguing him, you know? He intrigues her as well because he is hot, you know? But it's too hilarious. So he tells her he's having a dinner party. 18 people are coming tonight. Wants to know if she can do it. She's like, of course I can do it. I can throw a dinner party. So then they start having the whole solo conversation when it comes to his bedroom. He asked her if she wants to see his bedroom. She says yes. She's like, I want to see the rest of the house as well. He said, well, we're going to start with the bedroom. And he gave her a little tap on her ass. And she's like, don't think I'm going to sleep with you just because I'm going to your bedroom. And he's like, that's okay. We can do other things. Takes her to her room. I'm sorry, to his room. She's not really impressed with it because it looks like really manly and stuff like that. And of course, this is written on her face. But she did say to him, it just seems like you, a very dominant guy. He's like, yes, that I am. I am dominant. And then he takes her to the bed. Keep in mind, he still has on nothing but his boxers. He sits down. He pulls her on his lap, but he has her face down. And so she, of course, is like, what are you doing? What are you doing? He's like, you know what I'm doing. So he gives her a light smack on one cheek. And she's like, still with the, what are you doing? What's happening? He smacks a little harder, then he rubs her. And then he rubs her clit. And she's like, oh, yes. It's like, now she's just to the point where she's like, fuck it. I'm just going to say what I like. Okay. So he sticks a finger in her. She's super wet. He's like, oh, you like getting spanked a lot, right? So he gives her another smack for lying to him, and another one for the coffee shop, and another one for the Egg McMuffin. And he did say to her while she would, because then she sat up and, no. He said when they were in the dining room, she was like grinding on him, right? And she didn't want to admit to that, right? But this time, while she's on him, she clearly is grinding on him because she can feel his dick, but it's just not inside of her. And she rides it until she comes. And he, of course, is like, that was so fucking hot. He whips his dick out because he's like, I got to relieve myself. He's like, I'm going to take a shower and then I'll tell you what I need you to do today. What to clean and get ready for the party. And she's thinking like, oh my gosh, I've got to work and I've got to think about this. This is so much. And she's like, I cannot wait to tell my sisters. Her sisters actually come over because he allowed her to hire them as waitresses for the night, and he's going to pay them each $1,000. So they're stoked. So then, of course, she pulls them in the room. She tells them what happened. They, of course, are like, oh my gosh, that's so unbelievable. They call her a skank, and they're like, but everyone has to be a skank at least once in their life. Finn knocks on the door. He comes in. He introduces himself. The younger sister, Chelsea, is just kind of like, gawking at him. And she says, I see why you were a skank for him. I'd be a skank for those blue eyes too. And Harriet was so mortified. I'm like, what are you mortified for? Like, you already know they have no couth, like you already know this. So he just kind of looked, kind of like, okay. And then he told Harriet, like, he needed a list of what she wanted to make or whatever, because she went again into La La Land. And he's like, just let me know what you want to make. Because they were going to do the list together, but then he's like, just come and see me in 30 minutes when you come up with what you want to do, and we'll go over it. She's like, okay. And then before he left, her sister Chelsea, what did she say? She says, we already know you all had a little hanky-panky, I'm like, this girl is just team too much. She really is. So none of them can really cook. this is not their strong point at all, right? So they're going to look up some easy recipes online and see if they can come up with some good ideas, right? So Polly, however, is a little concerned because this stuff isn't adding up for her. She's like, he was super rude to you, got you fired, and then the woman that hired you didn't want you, but he stepped in for you. You pulled the whole egg McMuffin thing. He still wants you to throw a dinner party for 18 people. Like, this does not make sense. Like, you know? And she, of course, is just like determined to prove that she's going to be able to cook. She's going to be able to pull this off, you know, and she's not necessarily listening to reason. But I'm kind of with Polly. This does not add up, like, at all. She goes to give him a list of dishes, which was like deviled eggs, salad, rack of lamb, um, desserts, cheesecake, things like that. He wanted to add some more things. She's like, I can do it. It was like a branzino and some scallops, you know. So then he locked the door and told her to sit in the chair. And then he ate her pussy until she came. And then he whipped his dick out and strokes himself. And then she gets on her knees and sucks him off and lets him come down her throat. So the girls are in the kitchen getting everything ready. And I just think, I'm like, this is going to be a freaking disaster. It's got to be. Um, she told her sisters what she did in the office, and they, of course, poking fun, things like that. She goes to get ready, kind of leaves them to do a lot of the work. She does thank them and stuff. She tells them, you know, she's going to take them to a trip to Paris on her dime. She really appreciates them helping. Um, but I'm like, yeah, but they are getting a fucking $1,000 a piece for this shit, you know. Like, let's just be very clear, you know. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on. So she goes, takes a shower, she gets ready, tells them she has thought of a surprise for Finn for later. So then she comes out, she has on her black dress, she looks great. Her sisters tell her um, that she looks, you know, stunning. Finn comes out, he looks great. Um, he brings up about the scallops and the branzino. She realizes she didn't buy that stuff, so now she's freaking out. She winds up having asking Chelsea to go to Red Lobster to try and get some freaking scallops and maybe some branzino or some other type of seafood. And it's just like, girl, this is just gonna be a mess. Benedict comes up and he's like, I'm looking forward to your leftovers. I heard you were doing a rack of lamb. You know, it's supposed to be rare and all this type of stuff. So now she's spiraling. We get a little bit more information. We find out Finn um, has his PhD. So he's Dr. Finn Joseph. She's like, wow. So you're not the richest guy, you know, this billionaire, but you do have a PhD. He's like, I'm not that type of doctor. It's, you know, literary, but, you know, she knew she had seen him look like he was grading papers when she came into his office to give him the list. So she was super shocked. She, you know, was like, oh, okay, well, that's why he was doing that. She was thinking he was like grading his employees or something, you know, and he had this like extensive way of doing that. Something's going on because a guy had made a comment about, he had stated like the subject or something. And I'm like, okay, the subject, that sounds like somebody's doing a goddamn experiment, you know? And I'm like, this is, yeah, I'm with Polly. Something's freaking off. So she's terrified. She's hoping um, this can go good, but she has no type of confidence at this point. So Chelsea didn't go to Red Lobster. Polly went. Chelsea's ass poured all of the fucking hot sauce into the devil egg mixture, and now it looks fucking red. And she's just like, why did you do that? You know? She's like, well, I figured it would need a little bit more kick. You know, everyone likes hot sauce. I'm like, oh my gosh. This is just a shit show, you know, at this point. So they bring out the damn deviled eggs. One of the guy was choking. One lady still was like, I need water, so hot. She ran to go check on the other stuff. Really was to call Polly. Polly was at Red Lobster and she's like, well, basically she finna come back with some fish and chips and some cheddar biscuits. And she's like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So then Chelsea comes in and says, I think they had to call 911 on someone. He might have been having a heart attack. And then Finn's like, I need to talk to you right now. So she goes in his office. He says, I am going to ask you one time. Did you attend the Culinary Institute in Paris? And he's like, are you professionally trained? She tried to skip around the answer. She did the whole devil eggs was fucked up because of Chelsea. And she was like, they tasted amazing before. She hadn't even tasted them. She finally admits that no, she isn't. She isn't. She didn't go to the Culinary Institute of Paris. She is not professionally trained. She says she used to cook with her grandmother, which is true, but she did this shit when she was like a little bitty girl, okay? So she's still telling him the rest of the meal is going to be great. She admits she forgot the scallops and the branzino and that she's going to improvise. It's going to be great. And he says, why did Polly leave 20 minutes ago? And that's when she's like, because I forgot about the scallops and the branzino. And she tried to start flirting with him to like take his mind off of what was happening. And he just like, sweetie, that's the oldest trick in the book. She starts rambling, saying, please just give her another chance. She's going to make it right. Um, she's telling him, it's going to be fish and chips, but it's going to be amazing, all this type of stuff. She's still lying, saying that she had won an award for her beef stew. Like, this girl, she just won't come completely clean for nothing. And so he's like, okay, but if you don't get it right, like, I'm going to spank you with a lot more than my hand. So she goes in the kitchen. Polly's back. They plated everything, but she figures it's not going to be piping hot. So she brings some oil up to temperature, and she's going to like kind of refry it just a little bit, just so it'll be hot, piping hot. Because I get it. Coming from Red Lobster, it's not going to be that way. I get it, right? So anyway, they took out the cheddar biscuits first. Those were real good. Um, she's telling him, still lying, I told you I could cook. He said something about her being barefoot and pregnant, like that phrase. And he's telling her, if you play your cards right, you could be that and all this type of stuff. And it just was like, what the hell is he talking about? Like, where did that come from? And because her mind is now thinking about what he just said, she done fucked up the fish. So, Finn starts talking about them being soulmates. It all seems very off the wall, right? The girls come in, he leaves. She winds up burning the damn fish. She was trying to reheat them, and they're like, why would you do that? It was already fried. And they were like, listen, something is up, okay? We overheard them saying that they think you're the worst cook ever. And he told them that you went to some culinary institute, and they said when she was in kindergarten, like, they said she's a horrible cook. And if this is what he accepted, they should have applied for the job themselves, and just going on and on and on. And so they told her, this is what we're going to do. We'll just keep $100 for ourselves, but we're going to give you the money from tonight so you can like at least maybe get a room or a studio apartment I mean, you'll have to get another job, but at least you won't be here because he might be a psychopath, right? And she was very thankful for her sisters for what they wanted to do for her, but that, that was really nice that they had her back. But she's like, but I'm gonna finish this. They take out the fish. Some of it's burnt. It's a mess. She starts to talk, basically saying that she wasn't acquainted fully with his kitchen, and so everything wasn't up to par. And people are like, "You're right." Like, they're flat out just letting her know, "Girl, bye." One of the guys tastes the fish, and he's like, "This tastes like charcoal," and then goes, "What does she say?" No, Finn says, "I've got a catering company on the way. They'll feed you." And she's just distracted because he says to them, "We're eloping tomorrow." She, of course, is stunned, doesn't know what to say. Her sisters are looking crazy. She's like, "I need to talk to you in your office." "What are you doing?" When they get to his office, is what she says. And he says, "I'm doing what you've been doing this whole time. I'm lying." He said, "I knew from the get-go that, you were lying to me." You know what I'm saying? Like, he knew it. He wanted to see how long she was going to keep up the ruse. He's not a billionaire. He's a multimillionaire, apparently. He's a professor. And he has, money from family, that from different businesses, and he runs those. But he had someone in IT create that page so that when you Google his name, it's the first thing that pops up about him being a billionaire and stuff like that. And he's still not going to fire her. He offers her a few $1,000s that she can take right now and leave. He's like, or you can try and get better at housekeeping and you keep the job. And with everything else that with us, the fact that they want to fuck, let's just be honest, we can work something out. Well, she didn't just want to take his money, but I think it was she just didn't want to leave, is what I think it was. Because they both haven't fully fucked. They don't play, but they haven't fucked each other. And so she wasn't ready to leave, and that had not occurred. That's what I think was the situation. So she tells her sister she's staying. They, of course, are like, "What are you talking about? No, 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 you can't do that. He's playing games. This is some type of Hunger Games or Divergent type of situation." And she's just like, "Did you read the books or look at the movies? Because I don't think you understood either one. That's not what it is." So Finn walks up, and he, what did he say? Polly kind of was in his face and was kind of like, "This is not a good idea. You're playing games. You're playing with her. Like, straight up, this is not cool." He was like, "I understand your concerns and stuff like that, but we've come to an agreement, that, you know, we're going to work this out." Polly's like, "Well, did she tell you she's an art student and she's supposed to start graduate school soon?" And he was like, "No, she didn't tell me." And she's like, "Yeah, I'm not going to be available full time." And he's like, "That's okay. We can work around it." And he also said that, no, I think it was Chelsea that was like, she doesn't clean windows, she doesn't scrub toilets, like all this type of stuff. And he was just like, "Well, she'll be more like an assistant slash housekeeper, and we can hire a cleaner, right?" And again, that still doesn't make sense. It's like, okay, but your whole purpose was supposed to get a housekeeper. So if you're just going to get someone to clean the house, you could have outright just hired a service to do that. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just like, this is just so weird. So she, of course, is like, "I'm staying. Thank you guys for helping me out tonight. I really appreciate it, but I'm not leaving." She's like, "I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to bed." That's kind of it. So Finn walked him to the door. Oh, by the way, I forgot to say, no one was having a heart attack. That was just heartburn on someone's part. No one had a heart attack. I meant to say that earlier. So she leaves and she sits on her bed. Finn comes in and he's like, I thought you were taking a shower. She's like, I was just, giving myself a minute. And he goes, well, can I join you? And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, that's her favorite question when she knows exactly what that man means. Um, he went down the whole line of what he wanted to do to her. He was like, I was thinking I would take you in, completely undress you, smack your ass. I want to see your ass cheeks bounce, and then I'll rub them. And then I'm going to stick a finger in your ass, and I'm going to move it in and out, and then I'm going to rub on your clit, and then I'm going to bend you over, and I'm going to fuck you hard until I come, and then I'll wash you up. Whole time he's talking to her, he's like rubbing on her breasts and shit. And he was like, but we're gonna have to be more have a more professional relationship. So maybe, I shouldn't say stuff like that. Have a nice shower. Have my breakfast ready by 6 a.m. Get some rest. So she gets out of the shower. When she comes out, she sees something on the bed. And she thought she had heard someone come in, and clearly someone had. And it was a little butterfly. It's a vibrator. And so she's a little confused. And she's like, oh my gosh. Because it's like he said the whole thing about the sexual harassment, and then you leave her a vibrator, right? So she calls Molly um, and her former coworker, and she talked to her. She talks too much. That's her problem. She tells everything. She doesn't keep anything for herself. So she told Molly what she's been up to. Molly has um, gotten a little tea for her, letting her know that Charlotte apparently has been running ragged because she didn't even know how to use the fancy espresso machine. So she's frustrated. Delilah's frustrated, went off on her and stuff. And she's like, she's probably going to be calling you in a week, begging you to come back. Customers have been asking about you because they were like, you always brighten up their day and stuff. And that was nice for her to hear. And so Molly was of no, she wasn't really any help, because she just kind of was calling. Um, and she was starting to ask about him being a producer again. Like the girl just, just a mess. So she hangs out with her because there's a knock on the door. She's thinking it's Finn, but it's not. It's Benedict. So Benedict comes in and he's like, how was your first day? How did it go? All this type of stuff. And he was like, I figured, I might ask you for a massage. And she's like really tired. And she's like, that's weird. And he's like, I could really use one. And he says, if you decide to go lower, I wouldn't mind. I seen what you did for the boss, so if you're handing them out. So she, of course, got freaked out, ran out of the room, went straight to Finn's bedroom. And he was on his phone and he was like, what's wrong? And she told him what Benedict had just propositioned her to do. And she's like, did you tell him to do that? And he's like, no, why would I do that? You know what I mean? And she's like, I don't know. Did you want to see if I would cheat or something? Like, I don't know. And he said, I didn't do that or whatever. But he tells her, we do have chemistry and stuff like that. And she's like, well, I can't sleep in there tonight. And he's like, you want to sleep in my bed? And she's like, okay. And he said, did you get my present? She says, yes, but I don't know if I'm going to wear it tomorrow. And he says, well, if you don't wear it tomorrow, you have to wear it tonight. You got to make a choice. So she says, okay, so what's the plan for tomorrow? He's like, it's a surprise. She's like, so I'm supposed to make a choice based on not having all the information? He's like, yep. She's like, well, then I choose tonight. He's like, okay. So she goes and gets, no. He goes and gets the vibrator because she's like, she didn't want to go back to the room. So he went and got it, and he also told her he would talk to Benedict the next day. So he tells her, open your legs. And before that, he had said, do you want your nightgown on or off? And she said, well, what do you prefer? And he said, on. And she said, well, then I want it off. Which I'm like, he knew she was going to say the opposite of what he said. That's why he said that. And it totally worked. So he had her open her legs. He put the vibrator in, had it on low. It felt really good to her. And then he had like his dick at first in the crack of her ass, and he's rubbing on her breast and stuff. And then he jacks up the speed, and then she comes super hard, and then he takes the vibrator out. Um, I think he turns it around. He puts her finger in her pussy. She's super wet. He tastes her. He's like, I wish that was me tasting you. You're so sweet. And then his dick went. What did he do? I think he like rubbed her clit with his dick, but that was it. Cause she's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm not doing anything. I told you I wouldn't fuck you, but we can have some fun." So the next day, they go to the Port Sunshine Fair, and he had her invite her sisters and her friends. So she invited Polly, Chelsea, and Molly. Molly is still, of course, on the tip that he could be a producer of a movie or something. So she's still in acting mode, trying to give a resume that doesn't exist. It's a whole ass mess. They get inside, they get on the Ferris wheel. He was like, I was hoping we would do this last. And she's like, what, get on the Ferris wheel? He's like, yeah. So they get on the Ferris wheel. She's wearing a skirt because he had told her to wear a skirt. So he starts rubbing on her clit. She, of course, already wet. And then he tells her to get on his lap. She's like, people are going to see. He's like, people are going to see anything. So he scoots her over on his lap. He's ready to like fuck, and then the ride stops. And the guy says, we got an issue, give it a moment. So people now are going to be able to see. So she slides off of him quick. And he says, okay, but make me a promise. If I can find somewhere where no one can see us, can we fuck? And she's like, fine. They get off the Ferris wheel, and then Molly, um, what did she say? She brought up about him possibly buying the fair. He's like, no, I'm not doing that. That's not happening, you know? And she's like, really? Like she's just so stuck on the fact that he's rich. There's a way for him to get her to her dream. It's just, she is just so determined. So then they're like, okay, let's do the haunted house. And they're like, nah, Harriet is like really scary. She doesn't get down with the scary stuff. He's like, it's going to be fine. I'll be there to protect you, right? So they go, and she had asked him about Benedict. And she's like, did you talk to him? And she's thinking he was going to fire him. But we find out he really did send Benedict in to test her. So he's playing games, and that's the thing with him. I'm just kind of like, okay, what the hell going on? So they go in the haunted house. Guess what? Pitch dark. He pulls her to the side after they're in a little bit, and she's like, what are you doing? He said, you said if I find a place that was dark and no one could see, that we could fuck. And she's like, but someone might see us. He's like, how? How are they going to see us? It's dark. So he starts rubbing on her clit. They have a nice hard fuck. She starts making noises. So someone hears a noise. It's like, what's that? And then when they stop, they start pick back up and they keep fucking. Some more people come along. Same thing. They hear something like, what's going on? So eventually they're able to finish. He comes inside of her. And then afterwards he told her they're going to do it again in a few minutes. And she's like, what? He's like, don't tell me that wasn't the best sex of your life. And it was the best sex of her life. But it's not because of the haunted house aspect, but because that's the best dick she's ever had. And she wasn't going to say that to him because she was not trying to inflate his ego. They get out of the haunted house. He gets a call. He takes it. He looks irritated while he's talking. She's got a bunch of calls that's been coming from her sisters. So she calls Chelsea back because she knows Chelsea will answer. And Chelsea's like, they're about to go in the teacup, and then they're going to get some ice cream. She's like, well, we'll meet you up for some ice cream. She gets off the phone. Finn comes back over. He's like, what are we up to? And she's like, well, we're going to meet up for some ice cream. He's like, okay, cool. And then what did she say? She says to him, like, why did you want to bring my friends? And he's like, well, I wanted to get to know them. And she says, but you haven't get to know them like you've been fucking me. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, well, I know Molly. I've learned about him. Like, Molly wants to be an actress. She's worked at the coffee shop for over a year. She's like, wait a minute, how do you know that? I didn't even know that, you know? So then he gets his phone rings again. He steps away to take the call. She meets up with Chelsea and the girls. And Chelsea sees right away that her skirt's twisted and goes, you fucked him, you know? That's why you were in the haunted house for so long. Because they were in there for like 30, 45 minutes. So then they're like, what did you do with the condom? Did you throw it away? And she doesn't say anything. They're like, what did you do with the condom? You know? And so she admits they didn't use one. She's like, I'm going to go back on the pill. Because she hadn't been on the pill because she hadn't been fucking. And they're like, yeah, but you don't know what else you could have picked up. You know what I mean? And they're like, she's like, well, I'll ask him if it's clean. They're like, it don't matter at this point. You already done fucked him. You know? So whatever he has, you got it too. So then Polly, no, I'm sorry. Molly starts talking and telling them about Charlotte, how she's been acting strange. She's getting a lot of phone calls during the day, really weird, and something's up. And Harriet keeps going. She's like, you know, saying that, you know, well, he's been honest with me. He told me he was a professor. You know, he knows the truth about me. Like, it's done, right? And Polly's just like, nah, man, something's bigger is up. Something else is going on. And I'm just like, what is it I need to know? He comes from his phone call. He says, we should go meet your parents. She's like, what? Chelsea comes up and she's like, what are we doing? He's like, I was thinking maybe I could meet your parents. She's like, oh, yeah, let's get him some ice cream. This is weird, okay? You done a couple things with him. You done fucked him once and he wants to meet your parents? I'm like, what the hell going on? Like, this has got to be some type of game. It's just got to be. They keep talking and she winds up going along with it, which is crazy to me because she could have easily said, you don't need to meet my parents, you know, but she goes along with it because Chelsea's already talking about what ice cream her parents want. So then the other girls, they're just kind of like going along with it. Polly's like, you guys are gross, you know, because they do all the little cutesy stuff, the way they look at each other. And Molly's like, you guys are cute. She likes it. So they're going to her parents' house. So the girls are going to travel together, and then she's going to travel with him. I'm like, this is just too goddamn weird. I don't know. It just is. She asks him about his parents, you know, like, what if I wanted to meet your parents? And he says, well, that's not possible because they died when I was really young. She said something about siblings, and he said he's an only child. But she's remembering he had told her before that he had siblings. So this is clearly conflicting information. So I'm like, what the fuck is going on? You know? Like, something's up. So they're on their way. He seems to be driving in the direction of her parents' house. And she goes, wait a minute, how do you know where my parents stay? He says, I didn't know. I just figured I'd drive, and if I was, you know, going the wrong way, you'd tell me. So then she tells him to turn down Main Street. She says it'll be about another 3 miles. And so when they're talking, he gets a call from Benedict. He answers it through the car. And he says, Benedict, I need you to meet me at Harriet's parents' house. And Harriet, of course, is looking like, Benedict, like, what? You know? And Benedict says, is this because? And he cuts him off and says, yes. They hang up. She's like, why would you need him to come to my parents' house? And he says, well, if, you know, I have too much to drink, I don't want to drink and drive. So I'll have him come. And basically she's like, well, my parents are not big drinkers or anything like that. And he's like, you know, better safe than sorry. So then they pull up and she's like, how did you know where to go? He's like, well, your sisters are here. So he tells her how he hopes she shows him hit her childhood room. She's like, why would you want to see my room? And he's like, you know why. So we get to the parents' house and the dad says, nice to see you, Mr. Joseph. And she's looking like, how do you know him? And the dad's talking about, you know, a cologne and the flowers that he used and all this type of stuff. And He's like, let me show you the ones that I use. And Benedict pulls up in the limousine. He walks out. Molly's talking to him, and she's like being all flirty with this man. And Harriet's like, Molly, come on, like stop. So Molly's like, I don't know what happened. It's just it just made me start he just smelled so. I just wanted to curl up into him. So then Finn says, "Can you say that again, Molly?" She says it again. And so then Harriet's like, "What the hell is going on?" And Finn says, "Your dad is about to become a very rich man." Or was that the mother? The mother might have said that. And she's like, "What, did you hit the lottery, Dad?" And he says he's about to buy the patent for the cologne I made that's irresistible to women. So then Finn looks at Harriet and he says, "I'm going to tell you something, and you're either going to hate me or love me." Okay, so this is what happened. It was all a ruse. From her getting fired, everything with Charlotte, it was all put together. So, when he came in, he was supposed to be a jerk because her mother had told him that the one thing that Harriet hates is when people are rude to her. So he came in and he did his best and it worked. Charlotte was supposed to fire her, give her the ad, which she did, and it showed that a housekeeper was needed, right? So when she was talking to her mom kind of gave her the push as well, saying, well, just apply for it anyways. So it was all to see if this cologne was real that attracts women to men. And so he needed to know if it was the cologne or if it wasn't, right? So Benedict and Gladys, they're actors. He is a billionaire. He is also a professor, but he's like this major investment person. So she's like, so you've been lying and playing me from the beginning. He's like, it's not like that. It did start off that way, but this is something different. And so she quit. She's like, just, I'm done. Like, I can't do this. He's like, are you just done working for me? Or that's it about us too? Or do you not want to be my submissive? So her parents, of course, are like, what? Like, what's going on? And she says it's from 50 Shades of Grey. The book you read, and then you and Dad got it on. And they're kind of like, oh, okay, well, we'll leave. So they walked off. Um, Before they left, though, he had told her that he's gonna give the father the $5 million for the patent, which I'm like, shouldn't he get more? But anyway, I digress. So it's supposed to be, it's enough money for them to pay off the house, pay off the girls' education, put money in a trust for them so they can buy a home for themselves. Okay. So she tells him she's moving out. She's like, take me back home. And then she realizes she's calling it home, the place that she was with him. But she's like, take me back to get my stuff. She's like, I'm just done. I can't do it. I don't trust anything you say. None of it was real. He's like, that's not true. Her sisters had left out because she kicked them out too. And he was like, it was real, the part about us. The formula really worked. I had to know if it worked in order for me to invest in it. He's like, but me wanting you, like, that shit was real. I wanted you from the beginning. He's like, I didn't believe in love at first sight, but I do now. And she decides to give him another chance after he says a lot. And he says he's going to prove to her, and rebuild her trust and all this type of stuff. And I'm like, yo, it's not even been like 2 days. Like, what the fuck? I think it's been like 2 days tops. Jeez. So they go back to his place. She puts on some Dua Lipa. She gives him a real lap dance. He, of course, she tells him, you can't touch. She winds up whipping his cock out and fucking him. They both came at the same time. While she's fucking him, though, she told him she loved him. And he's talking about how he's no longer going to be the most eligible bachelor. And he's going to say it's going to have some type of headline the most eligible bachelor fell for the maid. She's like, I will kill you if you do that. And that's how it ends. Now, there are other books in the series, like I described in the beginning, and they're Polly and Chelsea's story. So I'm not going to review those, but if you guys are interested, you do have some other books that you could read within this series. What did you guys think? Let me know. I really liked it. I thought it was cute and I thought it was really quirky. Um my whole thing with her is that she just talks too damn much. She told her sisters everything and then got mad at them for like saying the shit in front of the dude. Like, you already know how they are. So that was the only thing with her that really just annoyed the shit out of me. Um I thought it was funny as hell that she was so committed to the lie. That made me laugh. But what did you guys think? Drop down in the comment section and let me know. If you are in the market for a beautiful notebook or journal, I do have those available, and the link is going to be available down below in the description section. Make sure you like and subscribe and share. And as always, I truly do thank you all for your support, and thank you for tuning in to the Always Reading Book Club.